There's a word. I will call the Finance Committee meeting to order on Thursday, June 23rd, 2022 at 7:03 p.m. We have on from the Finance Committee, Dean Nahadas, Andy Olderman, Mike Pratt, and myself, Sarah Melish. We expect Maury to join us, and I expect Greg, Town Administrator, to join at some point. The first item on the agenda, oh, there's Greg, okay. The first item on the agenda is the Harbor Master request to apply for a grant to expand the Inner Harbor floats. We discussed this at our May 26th meeting. And people had some questions. And so Brian wasn't able to attend that first meeting. I asked him to come to this meeting, or Gail asked him. And so I thought that we would go through the outstanding questions that people had. I know one question I had was with respect to the pump out station. The question was, is that manually pumped out, or is there some type of pipe sending it to the sewer plant?
Right, so if the town were to take that option, the Clean Vessel Act, which funds all of the pump out stations in the state and all of the pump out boats, would pay for 75% of the cost to put that in. Now, Manchester Marine currently has the land-based pump out station. They're going to stop accepting Clean Vessel Act funding and only use the facility for their own customers. They don't want to deal with transient boaters or other boats in the harbor to deal with waste. Now, so their system works, it pumps into a tank, and then a lift tank lifts what's in that tank into the town sewer system. So the Clean Vessel Act would pay for a similar system if the town wanted to do that. The benefit to that is that the Clean Vessel Act currently has, since it was initiated back in the 1990s, pays for 75% of the cost of installation, maintenance, staffing, 75% of all costs related to a pump out facility. It's the same with the boat that the town has, the pump out boat. Clean Vessel Act pays for 75% of the cost of buying a boat, fueling a boat, maintaining the boat, storing the boat, staffing the boat, and then the town picks up the other 25%. Benefit to having one of these stations at Reed Park would be that more people would get to use it, biggest benefit, and then 75% of the cost of staffing the dock, the young people who work on the dock could be attributed or refunded by the Clean Vessel Act grant. So that's up to $12 an hour. Right now, 75% it would still cover it. At 15%, it would still be 75%, but the current funding level is $12 an hour or 75%, depending on what you're paying your staff. So that would cover the cost, a large portion of the cost of staffing the dock.
But there is a hard connection to the sewer system then? Yeah.
There would be.
Yeah.
There would be. And again, the Clean Vessel Act program would pay for 75% of the cost to put that in place.
So net 25% to us, both to like build the infrastructure and then to maintain it? Is that?
Right, so 25% of putting the infrastructure in place, 25% of the cost of staffing it, 25% of the cost to maintain it, yes.
So let's 30,000 foot, like what on an annual basis, what would that be roughly?
I'm sorry, on what?
On an annual or seasonal, you know, for the summer?
What would the town pay?
Yeah.
Right, so,
Just ballpark.
right, so actually, I could probably get a really solid number from Manchester Marine for what it would cost for the shoreside setup. For us on the boat, it costs it's been costing us just under, right around $6,000 a year to have that boat and staff it, fuel it, maintain it, and store it. And we get, we've been getting right around 4,000 back. That's not quite right.
Is it fair
It
to say
might
we're
be-
talking? Is it fair to say we're talking a 4-digit number, not even a 5-digit number?
For the boat, definitely. Yes.
What about for this new deal?
So I don't know what it costs to install these systems. But once it's in, remember a large part of what it costs to have the pump out boat is fueling it and storing the boat and maintaining the boat and replacing engines on the boat, which would have nothing to do with this actual system. And then as far as staffing the boat, the pump out station, it would cover a large portion of the cost that we're already paying to staff that dock.
Right. So
Seeing people.
I guess it'd be good to know both numbers, but it sounds like the bigger risk is the cost of the system. Like you said, it sounds like the cost of maintaining is probably going to be small dollars.
Right. The upfront cost would be the biggest expense, definitely.
I mean, do you know ballpark with that? I mean,
No idea.
no idea.
I couldn't even begin to guess what it would cost to get that hooked into the sewer system.
I mean, that could be 50, 100, couple $100,000, right? I mean, I have no idea either, right?
Right, it could. So if this were going to be part of an expansion of the Repark dock, it would be folded into the grants that would potentially be used. So if 75% of the cost is being covered by the Clean Vessel Act, then either Seaport Economic Council or U.S. Fish and Wildlife Big Grant, or part of either of those would potentially pick up the balance, the 25% cost. So it would be 2 or 3 different grants that could cover 100% of the cost of the system.
So you're saying that with a high degree of confidence that net when all the dust settles, basically grants will cover 100%.
Right. Well, so when it comes to I talked to the administrator for U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and they said they have done this sort of thing before with the Seaport Economic Council with a 50-50 share for a dock system and a pump out station included in it. So yes, high degree of confidence.
Okay. I guess that's great to hear, and that gives me comfort, but it still would be good to know, let's call it the gross cost, right? Because the net cost, what you're saying, is 0 after grants, but it would still be good to know the gross cost.
So I can work on getting that number, and I can email it out to Sarah, who can distribute it to everybody.
Cool.
Andy, do you have some questions? Fine.
I'll defer to Maury. I saw his hand up.
Oh, okay, sorry. Lloyd?
You're muted, Maury.
Oh, Maury, you're on mute.
You're muted, Maury.
I apologize for that. I hope I can. Great.
Love to see Miles working with no noise coming.
I hope it comes out as good as it did the first time.
It's been a long day. Really, two questions, Brian. One is, it seems like there's a lot of cost to getting piping and sewer around to the dock. Is there a way to do this where you use a pump out boat, but they go under the bridge and closer to the sewer station to unload, or to tap into something that doesn't involve digging up the street, digging up Reed Park, running piping across that area? And then I think just a second question is, grants are great and incentives are great, but do you think, what's the history of the Seacoast or and will it be around, and has it been around for 10 or 15 years? And do we think it'll be around for another 10 or 15, or are we going to be held with the cost in the long run?
So you mean the grant that supports the program?
Correct.
Yeah, that's a good question. I know the program has been in place since the early to mid 90s. Manchester Marine actually received one of the earliest boats, which is the boat we're still operating, actually, 1995. Massachusetts, just so everyone knows, is considered the gold standard in the United States for the pump out program, the Clean Vessel Act program, for states that don't have year-round boating. So for seasonal boating, nobody does a better job with the Clean Vessel Act than this state. There is no indication right now that the federal government's going to end this program. That being said, I wouldn't dare guarantee that it will be around in another decade or 2 decades or 3.
And then the second or the first question is, instead of putting in all this infrastructure, would it be possible to do a pump out boat, but unload it by having the staff member basically go under the railroad bridge and maybe simplify that process?
Yeah, I certainly we could. There could be a holding tank. The way these usually work is they're on a floating dock that's actually a giant floating holding tank. And the boat could certainly upload and go around inside if that were the pleasure and the easiest way to do it. That is a possibility, absolutely.
And if we did that, would we still have access to grants and offsetting staffing and boat maintenance and things like that?
Yeah, all we have to do is operate the system as laid out by the Clean Vessel Act. We don't get to charge. There's absolutely zero fee to pump out your boat. That's one of the incentives. That's what's encouraged so many people to take advantage of it. So we would run it just like that. We just would be handling it rather than having it go straight into the sewer system. We can move it, so there would be no penalty.
Andy?
Yeah, I was recalling, Maury, you had asked a question last time we talked about this, about the portion of the proposed dock that was parallel to Bridge, or not Bridge Street, but Beach Street, and the concern of, the location of that in the context of low tide and so forth. So I was curious to hear Bion's take on that.
Sure. So the concern being that the floats and the boats would be in the mud at low tide.
Yeah.
Right. So we're just about at the final iteration of what the docks would look like. It's gone through the first one that was proposed by the engineers had 51 pilings, and that immediately got waved off the carrier. I think we're down to, I think it might be 12 pilings at this point for the entire system. And none of these floats may, by state regulation, be within 2.5 feet of the bottom. So the entire system would, including the docks going from Morse Pier to Reed Park, would be floating at all times. At least 2.5 feet of water.
And overall, the motivation for the project is just to enhance access to the town from incoming boaters.
Well, so there's actually more than that. As far as one of the motivations for the piece we were just discussing, the fisherman's piece, is it's something that the town can do that will ensure that we continue to have a fleet of fishing boats in the harbor, which aesthetically, if you're from New England, it's fun to be down at the pier when the folks are walking by and looking in the lobster crates and all of that. That's one piece. But from a grant writing perspective, this fleet the town's benefited with most of the grants that have been written for the harbor because we have a fishing fleet here. And given the challenges of fisheries today, providing a facility where a percentage of our fishermen can have that kind of access to their vessels, to do repairs, to maintenance, makes the harbor much more attractive. And the way it's sort of playing out is our most senior, most productive, oldest fishermen we have 2 at the dock right now, and that the fishermen actually chose them, but it extended their fishing career. They are able to keep going longer because they don't have to risk their lives climbing up on the bow of their boat in the spring and the fall. I don't have to watch those guys who are 70 years old crawling on their hands and knees up the side of their boat to put a mooring pennant on. So from that perspective, we get to continue to have a healthy fleet in the harbor, and the fee structure would be that it would more than cover the cost of the annual maintenance of that part of the facility.
Right.
If we're also talking about the Reed Park facility, the expansion of that is, from my perspective, and the perspective of a lot of people who've come to me and scolded me for not trying to put it in all the way down to the bridge to the beginning, is it can be the means, likely would be the means for funding infrastructure projects or the town's share of infrastructure projects going forward, including dredging, including replacing docks when they need to be replaced, boats when they need to be replaced, all the different aspects, breakwaters, seawalls, not breakwaters, but riprap walls, seawalls. When Greg and I worked to get the SEC grant to do Morse Pier and the portion of the Masconomo Park wall, the fishermen were a big part of that. I think the town's share was 20% of the total cost. It was 20% of the total cost. So the Reed Park dock revenue would be the match for those things. If we think back to before 2000, and I think we wrote our first grant was the Massport grant in 2013 that paid for conversion of all the outer harbor moorings. But when we think about what the infrastructure was like before 2012, and that there was no funding to keep up the infrastructure of the harbor, this is a means. This is a way to do it. Taxation is another one. Raising mooring fees more is another one. But this, when we look at Reed Park, for the first 6 years, that dock was overwhelmed by out-of-town boaters. Lots of resident boaters complained to me, rightly so. We pay for this facility and we can never get to it. I didn't have the wherewithal or the means to pay to have someone go down there to chase people off. So now these transient boaters that would come in and overwhelm not just Reed Park, but the pier and the fisherman's facility and the boat club all have a place to come where they are now paying, contributing to the upkeep of this harbor. So to me, that's the real benefit and justification for a project that residents have come to me and asked, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you just go all the way to the bridge? And I said, well, we didn't.
Okay.
Are you done, Andy?
Yep, all set, thanks.
Okay, Dean?
Yeah, I caught something when you said that, we have to keep 2.5 feet freeboard under those floats. Does that, we'll probably have to dredge more often because that silts in quite often in there. Would we need to dredge more often if we have those floats to keep that 2.5 feet?
That is a good question. Once you start adding boat traffic in there, a lot of places will tell you that one of the best dredging is to have boat traffic. The lobster boats will probably help prevent that from silting in as quickly. Will it have to be dredged more often as part of the what I predict the 40-year cycle of dredging? Could be. It could be, but I don't know for sure. That area hadn't been dredged since the 1980s. Before that was a long time. It was almost 40 years since that had been dredged, and that's about what we would predict for a typical dredge cycle.
Any more questions, Dean?
Well, I mean, I see a restricted resource. It's a small harbor. I don't see why we want to attract so many out-of-town boaters when there's so many residents waiting on a waiting list to get into the harbor. So I have a big problem with that right there. It's like a income versus resident services issue. Second, you know, the current Reed docks, it's a lot of wood. It really is grating to that Victorian harbor setting. And it's often quite bare. Yes, it fills up on the weekends, but off season and it's a little objectionable. And I'm, for one, would be looking to reduce the scale of what you're trying to do because of so much down, you know, off peak time that it's just going to be out there. You know, the town is trying to the trend has been to privatize services. I don't think we should be getting into the marine business. Because there is a lot of overhead associated with it and there's a lot of risk. So I would vote, like I said at the last meeting, I don't know if it made the minutes, but the finger docks off Morse Pier I know we started a trend of letting the old fishermen come into the dock and there's more old fishermen coming now. But the whole fishing industry as a whole, I don't see really expanding in this town. But I do see a benefit of, you know, that whole section of Morse Pier that comes this way is, if you extend it towards Beach Street and put some finger docks, I could see that makes sense. The rest of it seems overblown and I wouldn't recommend it. No matter how much income it brings in, I think it's going to be offset by costs and risk. And just another issue that, you know, the trend has been to privatize that stuff. I don't see enough resident benefit. Yes, there's money involved if it's worked well, but you're not gonna be around here much longer, and, you know, I mean, you did say you were gonna retire soon. I didn't mean that as a,
It's all right.
yeah.
And
But
you
I
know
mean,
what, Dean?
what's next? The next
You
guy's
never
gonna
know.
come in with no accountability, and he's gonna say, hey, this is what I was given. So I think we just had a 50-year renovation of the harbor, and I don't see why the rush to put this whole thing in now. To me, tourism is not a desirable industry. I get upset when I see the town promoting tourists because I see parades of people following that parking sign into Masconomo Park, swinging around because there's no parking and coming back out, and it just clogs the whole thing all weekend. That type of industry, there's too many peaks resulting in congestion, and I think we should stay away from it. But that's my opinion. I wanted to say it. Let's see, what else did I have? Also, this area in the Inner Harbor seems like prime mooring space for residents on the waiting list. I know you've made it commercial and it's not, but the bottom line is it's the harbor and residents are on the waiting list. And should we be developing over them when we're taking their money to hold a spot for them? These are some of the concerns I have with going forward with this second Reed Park expansion at this time. I guess I said,
Okay,
you wanted me to say it all at once, so there it goes.
thank you. Maury, you had something else?
Yeah, I did. I've been thinking about this a lot, and you know, I think when, you know, if you go look out the harbor right now, it's high tide and it all looks great. But in 6 hours, that area will be in mud. And I had some pictures of that last week, and I think or last meeting, and I think when you think about docks being 2.5 feet up, that's going to be a real challenge in there. And I just don't understand quite the benefit. I guess a couple statements that were made, and I would just think we should correct them or be aware of it. I mean, I think the idea of putting in docks to enhance a fisherman's career is a little bit of a misstatement, because fishing is inherently a pretty dangerous profession. And yes, picking your mooring up in Manchester Harbor is some risk, but frankly, being out in a boat at sea and hauling gear is probably even more dangerous. So I don't quite buy that. I think the issue of aesthetics, it was mentioned, and that I have a bit of an issue with that. The pilings that go in for these piers, which are required, are big. And I don't know if any of you looked in the Cricket, I don't know, 3 weeks ago for the prom pictures, but the prom pictures all had pilings in the back of them. That's the first time we've seen that. And I mean, these are these 18-inch diameter steel pipes that stick up 22 feet. And, you know, I just think back that, you know, groups like Land's End and Vineyard Vines have taken pictures of the rotunda over the years, and now they have these pilings in them. And some people like that, and some people probably don't. I've heard people, selectmen, think we should perhaps paint them, you know, which is maybe interesting. The question is, if we start popping those things in downtown, and now you drive over the railroad tracks and up toward the beach, and you're staring across a lot of infrastructure, does that really help the town in the long run? And I guess the Reed Park expansion just has me concerned. I guess I'm in favor of pump out and extending out toward the railroad bridge. But when we start putting infrastructure in front of Beach Street, in front of Captain Dusty's, tying it around that way, I really think we ought to step back as a town. Again, I'm not wearing the financial lens right now, and question why we're doing this in the long run, and what impact it may have on essentially the aesthetics of the town and why people come here. So that's my 78 cents.
Another thought, if I may, it might benefit the residents more to investigate rebuilding the wall along Beach Street a little bit further out to widen that causeway to make adequate room for parking, and not trying to squeeze that line in. You know, depending on beach traffic, I mean, all it takes is for one person to stop to park and the whole line backs up into town on a busy Sunday. So, you know, we might want to reserve a spot to widen Beach Street down the road as well.
Okay, thank you. Mike, did you have anything else?
No, I'm good, thanks.
Andy? No?
I'm good, thank you.
So where do we stand on that? Brian's looking to apply for a grant. And he needs to do it in the near future. Yes, Brian?
Right, so I understand the sensitive nature of this, and again, I'm only championing what other residents have put forward to me. This isn't my project. It wasn't my idea. It was residents of the town. And trust me when I tell you, if I don't have to write any more grants the next 4.5 years, it's not going to break my heart. But when I look at how the harbor is going to fund itself, not over the next 4.5 years, but over the next 20 and 30 years. Well, let's say 20 years, because that's the life of expectancy of the grant dictates. To pay for town share of dredging, the next $3.7 million project, the town share to pay for riprap repair over at Masconomo Park, finishing the cost of finishing the wall at Masconomo that was started. Certainly the causeway could be widened without interfering with the footprint of the docks. It's not going to widen out further, I don't think, than the mud flats in front of it at low tide. So I guess I would leave it by saying this is a means of funding. It's up to the town to decide if it wants to pursue it. I will only write grants if that's the pleasure of the town. Just the funding before was non-existent in 2011. We had a dredge project that we had no money to pay for. Fortunately, we got some grants and managed to save the money. So if it's going to be on the backs of the boaters of Manchester, I think other means to collect money rather than raise the mooring rates would be better. But that's it for me.
So when do you have to do this, write this grant?
So there are 2 grants that need to be written. One is due November 1st. The other is due August 1st. The big one is due August 1st. The hardest one, that's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Grant. And that's not one that can be done in a week or 2 weeks. It does require more time. And then the next opportunity would be next August. The SEC grants, Seaport Economic Council grants, are November 1st and May 1st. U.S. Fish and Wildlife is once a year. Awarding a grant, that grant is usually in February. SEC grant would be actually in 2 phases. Potentially, they like to pay for engineering and permitting in one round and then have you come back in a later round with the assurance that you will get the money for construction if they've given the money for engineering and permitting.
And Brian, we received the money from Seaport to do the engineering on the fisherman fingers, if you will, right?
Yep. So if we're going to move forward with that, we're assured of the money for construction, which is 80%. Yes.
Just one quick question. back to the pump out boat and that kind of stuff, just high level, how do we match up peer to peer, other coastal towns? Is that pretty
So
common?
we're smaller than everybody around us. So our volume is lower, but from percentage of boats, we're on par with other communities, percentage wise, for the number of boats we have.
Right. So if you adjust for our size, however you character, then we're whatever. We're in the middle.
Yeah.
Got it. All right. Thank you.
Where we should be. Yep.
Got it.
Although we're always looking for new customers.
So we're not going to meet, we're hoping not to meet again in July and August, right? So what do we want to do? Do we want to give them the go ahead to apply for the grant and help participate in the design later? Yes, Maureen.
I'm just wondering if it's possible to apply for the grant for the pump out business and all of that, or is it all or nothing? You have to do one or nothing.
No, certainly we could apply through the Clean Vessel Act for just a pump out station. Without expanding the docks, that would be 100% possible.
I wonder if it makes sense to pursue expanding Reed out towards the bridge, towards the railroad bridge, and the pump station. And then once we had the final design work on the Morse Pier, we could apply to Seacoast in late fall for that, but not do the interconnection, and which seems to sort of be a center of concern. That might be a sort of a compromise here, if you will.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to it, and from a big picture standpoint, but I think there's lots of different details that we're talking about here. And I think there seems to be a little bit of nervousness about saying, yeah, go for it, versus let's, I would be supporting, looking further at it and, maybe breaking it up into some of the pieces that Maury suggested, and, even evaluating the pier along, toward the bridge. I don't know, like, I'm not out there in the harbor as much as some of you are, but my recollection is the backside of the railroad tracks is not necessarily anything great to look at.
I think Greg's idea is a good one, breaking this up and trying to figure out how we get economic benefit from these grants and the Seacoast and others, but ease into it through pieces, and stay away from the things that might be controversial. Seems like extending toward the railroad bridge and dealing with pump out and covering some of our maintenance and staffing costs is a win-win. And then ease into the Morse Pier thing. You've got the engineering, see where that takes us, and then review from there.
Is the
I had a question. I'm sorry. How much of the 50,000 revenue actually went into the town coffers as profit? Or is that the profit, or is that the total revenue?
That is total revenue. It cost $16,000 to staff the dock last year. So that put 32 back into the harbor usage fund.
And if
So,
you have the
yeah.
pump out station, the costs go down, is that correct?
Right, so the costs go down for the town. You wouldn't have to, it's unlikely you would have to increase staffing for the expanded facility over and above what we already have. So you would be generating more revenue without, certainly not a significant increase, if any, to staffing. And then the benefit of having the Pump Clean Vessel Act pay for a large portion of the staff.
Will these grants impact our ability to get the grants for other things we need, like the rotunda or the a bathroom, or you know, some of the DPW, you know, we have a lot of things we want to be building here. Do we have to choose, or I mean, is this that's the other component? If we, you know, use our grant capacity for this, will we have to pay through taxes for the other needs that the town has?
So
I think
These are some of
The big grant is really, the only use of the big, you know, that building infrastructure money is really for docks. That's the only thing that's going to pay.
it's just for docks.
Yeah.
right.
But
The
our
super
grant
econo-
writers, they're working on a lot of things, right? Not just this. We have a grant writer, right, that you hired a couple of years ago? Or,
Right, special projects and grants, yes, yes.
I mean, I would assume they'll be working on this.
I think Buy-in does this grant.
I've done all of the harbor grants so far. I did also, so in answer to the Rotunda question, I reached out to the Seaport. Rotunda is not my project. That's Park and Recs. I will assist where needed, but that's not my project to see through. But I did reach out to the Seaport Economic Council and talk to them about the project, and they did ask or tell me to go ahead and submit a grant for the engineering and permitting of the work on the rotunda, which I did do. So they are willing to, if they're going to fund the permitting, then they'll certainly fund a portion of the construction. If I understand correctly, they give up to $1 million per project. So certainly not going to be all of it, but a portion of it. And they do like these layered projects where you do a thing, and if it's successful, you come back, and if there's another piece that can benefit the community, they're more than happy to keep offering those grants. I think the challenge we may, depending on what happens with the MBTA corridor and the whole housing issue, SEC will not give any more grants to communities that don't fall in line with those parameters about the housing along the MBTA. So we may have a sundown on our ability to apply for Seaport Economic Council grants. So that's something to consider as well. But it does not, there has not been a point at which they've said enough. That's, I always reach out first because I don't want to just submit something and have it be too much. I'd rather call and ask the question so it doesn't tarnish what the perception of the town and the grants we receive.
So where do we stand on this? We've spent almost 50 minutes on it.
Yeah. So are we meant to vote for authorizing something, or is this just for us to hear?
Well, I think that oh, go ahead, Greg.
I was just going to say, it'd be helpful to have your recommendation. It's obviously.
I would make a motion to, consider, not sure the right way to phrase it, but consider some of the parts and pieces of what has been proposed as opposed to the whole thing.
So are you suggesting that expand the Reed Park to the railroad bridge and do the pump out station?
Yes.
I'll second that.
Mike seconds it. Any more discussion? I'll take a vote. Maury,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Dean,
No,
no, and Sarah votes yes. So that's support. It was a majority. Okay,
All right, everybody. Thanks. If you have any questions along the way, please let me know. And as soon as we get engineering details for that fisherman's piece, that separate piece, I'll make sure that's shared with everyone. So everyone can have eyes on what's being proposed down there.
thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks for championing this, Bion. That, I know it's a lot of work. So it's good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Have a great night, everybody.
Thanks.
I hope you're done soon.
No, we got a long list of crap.
All right, let's accelerate here.
So the next item on the agenda is the fiscal year 2022 transfer requests. And I believe that Andrea sent those to everyone last week. I think it was the end of last week. And so I thought that we would start first with the reserve transfer request. So this is from the Finance Committee Reserve Fund. And there's two requests. One is 25,000 for workers' comp, and one is 93,000 for firemen. Oh, three requests: firemen salaries, and then 6,848. I'm sorry, workers' comp we did in December, so that's not on the table. So the two on the table for tonight are the fire salaries for 93,000. And the elections and registration for $6,848.
Yes, I'd like to add, I do have a couple last minute changes. And
Okay.
we all don't like those. But like I said, I'm trying to make sure we don't have to meet again. So I do have one more reserve fund transfer. I'm actually asking for additional funds for the legal and professional services. So I'm going to be splitting that up between the reserve fund and departmental transfer. So that would be $35,000.
From the reserve fund?
Correct, yeah. To legal professional services.
One thing I would like, I'm not going to hold up a vote on this, but I would like to know on the legal and professional what we're spending by departments. I think that it's just one big mass, and it would just be helpful for us to understand
Yes, absolutely.
that breakdown. Okay.
Yeah, I would say just a broad overview, the big drivers of the overage in legal this year is the 40B and some pretty significant personnel issues that we've been dealing with.
What's the total? I know 35 grand of legal is proposed to come out of the, FinCom fund. What's the other piece?
The other piece would be 50,000 from departmental, so a total of 85,000.
Wow.
And what was the budget?
I have it in front of me.
I want to say 65, no, 80, 95. I shouldn't guess.
So it's double.
It's close.
It was 80,000.
80,000. Okay. All right. So yes, it's been a bad year.
And we're going to have the same issue in 2023 because of the 40B, right?
Well, hard to say for sure. Certainly in July and August, there'll be expense. Where it goes from there, it's hard to say.
How about the other stuff, the personnel? Do you see that at least winding down or no?
I do. Yeah, I'm hoping that's winding down in the next couple, 3 weeks.
But it'll still go into 23 a little bit.
Yes. Yes.
We received information on the fire salaries. Do people have any question on that?
why we wanted to hire another fireman to keep that overtime down.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just, I had a question on that. If these were all sort of isolated events, Greg or Andrea, or if this looks like a bunch of things that have been going on for a long time here. And it doesn't look like a unique situation. It looks like an ongoing situation. And has it been rolled into the budget for next year? Or are we basically headed for a similar OT situation next year?
Well, it really depends on the health of the firefighter. So we've had a string of bad luck with injury to the firefighters, and that has really driven a lot of the overtime, because when you're down one or two regular firefighters, and we're constantly backfilling with overtime.
What about the one that was injured in Gloucester this week?
Not a serious injury at all. He's back. He's back.
Okay.
He's back full
Okay.
force. It was
Okay.
really a dehydration issue, and he got dizzy, but he was fine.
Okay.
Luckily.
So is that workers' comp? It's kind of the flip side of the same coin? Meaning, if a firefighter obviously gets injured, then it's going to result in overtime for the non-injured firefighters, but then for the injured individual, is that the workers' comp or no? Something totally different?
Yeah, Andrew, do you want to jump in on that one?
Sure. It is the same, but it's a little different. So even if they're on workers' comp, they still use like a lot of their like sick time,
Right.
to compensate for that. And we actually pay it out and then we get reimbursed from our insurance. So that's why it's coming out of that bucket, if you will. So it's kind of like paying two people at the same time, even though we're getting money from workers' comp. That's why we asked for that 25,000 for workers' comp back in December, too, because that was our deductible.
That's the deductible. So once we hit it, what you're saying is we got some money in from the insurance carrier? Yes.
So we have received a few $1,000s so far above our deductible back. So I just need the bucket to spend it from.
So what's our retention deductible? It's 25 grand?
It is, yeah.
I'm guessing you're not going to have the answer for this off the cuff, but I'd be curious in the future, like how often or how many times in the past 5, whatever X years we hit that deductible,
This has been the first year.
First year. Okay.
So is this person who is out through June? When do we expect him to return?
So I think he's getting his final test to demonstrate his ability to return this week, next week sometime, or very, very soon.
Okay.
So I believe his doctor has given him the green light to return, and we will send him to our own firm to confirm that.
Okay. So Andrea, for this legal and professional,
Mhm.
what's the account number?
The account number for legal professional is 001-100-045-53050.
Okay. Then I'll make a motion to transfer from the finance reserve fund to account number 001-200-103-51,000, fire salaries in the amount of $93,000. To account 001-100-015-53050, elections and registration, $6,848. And to account 001-100-045-53050, legal and professional, $35,000, for a total of whatever that is,
134,848.
$134,840.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
The sheet said 124,000.
Yeah, it's 124, not 134.
No, we added 35,000. And the 124 included the 25,000.
From before. So
Yeah,
That's 10. Okay, that's for the 10. Okay.
okay.
98, 118. Well, I'm sorry, but I'm a math person. If you add those three numbers, the 25 grand, the 93 and the 6848, that adds up to 124,848. If we're adding in,
Those aren't the three numbers we're adding, because we already transferred the 25,000. We're adding the 93,000, the 6848, and the 35,000 that she added in tonight.
Yeah.
the
That's
99.
So it'll be
That's it.
93,000 plus 6,848 plus 35,000 is a 134,848. And then if you take the 25 out, then the reserve fund balance left is 152.
Okay, then I agree that adds up, but it's just, this is very confusing because that legal thing's not in there, but whatever, fine.
Yeah, I usually try and send out that reserve fund with all the activity, so that like confusing. So we have that one from December.
Any more discussion? I'll take a roll call vote. Dean,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes,
Maury,
Frozen.
Lori's frozen.
Mike,
Yes,
Sarah votes yes. Are you unfrozen, Maury? Okay, so it is a vote of 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'll have to say 1 abstention.
I just, one quick follow-up question, doesn't impact, whatever, but obviously, Andrea, you picked 35 grand from this place because that brings it down to 0 effectively, right? But that left the balance of 50 grand to come out from where?
We're going to go through all of that next.
I'm taking it from health insurance. But yes, that will be coming next.
Okay,
And we still have a balance of 25,000, right?
No, $152,000, $152. Because we
Wow.
took the 25 out in December.
Before, okay, we already took it. Yep,
Yeah.
okay, I got it. They did
Well,
a good
it's-
job in raiding that fund.
exactly.
It's confusing the way it's presented.
Better next time.
Okay, so now we have the interdepartment transfers. Oh, boy. Is Maury back? No,
Let's see him.
okay. Did people look at these, or do we need to go through each one?
I looked at them.
I read through them.
I mean, I'll go through them quickly just because I know that Mike had a question on them. So,
I did have 2 other changes.
oh no.
Oh,
But I'll preface, I had 1 change for the legal professional services. I have a change for the harbor master salaries, and then I have a new one.
There's like 3,000 for the harbor master, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
and I'm
so-
proposing,
So we've got two updates and one new.
This is very complicated. I'm sorry. There's just so much volume here. So,
it might be easier to go one by one.
Is there anything that you can share on screen, Andrea? That's an update?
I do, I have that.
Would that work, Sarah?
I'm gonna
yeah, it would have been nice, to be honest, it would have been really nice if you'd sent it to me this afternoon. Because I'm going to have to sign each one of these, and now they're all going to be changed, so I'm not even going to be able to sign them at this point.
Yes, I apologize for that. I was just really doing it before the meeting.
Okay, so the first one I have is $1,927 for cleaning service, transferred from cleaning services to Tux Point Professional Services. No, from cleaning services and Tux Point Professional Services to Tux Point salaries. That correct?
That's correct.
And that didn't change?
Nope.
I guess we'll have to take, okay.
I was gonna say, if you want, I do have a spreadsheet up that I've highlighted the changes. If you want to see if that makes it a little clearer.
Yeah, let's do that. This is very slow and painful. And our last meeting was slow and painful, going through the entire warrant when the meeting was never held.
Yeah.
I think you have to allow me, is that right?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, I have to do that. I forgot that I'm the person.
yeah, I'm not in as host.
I was in a meeting earlier and I tried to do it and I wasn't the host. Okay.
All right, let me check. You all see it okay?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so what I did is I have the initial request, which is what I scanned to you. The additional request amounts, and then the total. So you can see here's the 35,000 for reserve fund, and then I increased the 50,000 for health insurance for legal and professional. Here's the new addition, and here's one update. So all you voted these three already.
Yeah. So,
So
okay, so this, or the order I have seems to be the
it should
order
be the
of,
same order.
what's the 1,500? Oh, that, you've broken it down. Okay,
So all of these should be in the same order as what I scanned it to you.
4,000, 68,000. Okay, 20. Okay, so,
And then legal was altered.
Yes,
right, so this was 40 and now it's 50.
correct.
That correct? Still from health insurance.
Correct.
Yeah,
Okay.
Hey, Andrea, can I ask one question? And this applies to a lot of these.
Yes.
And I'm sure the answer's here in front of me, but I'm not in Excel, so I can't really add cells. But what's the total that got pulled from the health insurance?
That's actually on the bottom here. So it's 150,911. Got
And-
pulled from health insurance, and we have $158,000 remaining.
Sorry, say that last part again.
We have $158,000 remaining in the health insurance expense line. And so I pulled 150,911 and 30 cents from it.
So basically, after you pull that amount, it's only whatever, $7,000 or something.
Yes, exactly.
So we came in under budget on health insurance by whatever, 158, 159. You took 150 out. Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Got it.
Part of that underage was the fact that our carrier gave us a premium holiday in the last summer.
For a month.
Right, for 1 month.
Is that what was they say why? They just felt like being nice?
So they're sitting on a pretty healthy fund balance themselves. And it was part of their effort to give back to their members.
Okay. Better than a sharp stick in the eye.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I have a question on this process, like for Tux Point, say. So the salaries went up about 2,000 because we had a longer season. But doesn't that mean we had more receipts because of the longer season? And the receipts go into the general fund so that
Correct.
it doesn't cover.
Correct.
Is that why would, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, when we approve the budget, it's all broken down by line items. And we changed the process a few years ago so that town meeting votes on larger categories, which enables us to move it between line items. But the finance committee needs to sign off on that at the end of the year.
I see. Okay.
But it seems like this is getting worse each year, and I'm hoping that for the 2024 budget, we can be better aligned by line items, so we don't have so many transfers between them. Like it seems to me like we're over budgeting planning salaries year after year, and we have excess in there. So I'm hoping for 2024 we can be more realistic about those budget amounts.
Yeah, that one in particular, we budget the town planner for 40 hours just to cover the 10 hours from the Affordable Housing Trust, but we don't necessarily know if they're going to use the full 10 hours a week. And they usually don't, but it fluctuates from year to year. So we budget the whole amount, which is why there's additional in there.
Any more questions on this, comments?
I just have one question. I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but if we hadn't quote unquote gotten lucky and been under on health insurance by the 150 or 158 grand, then what would have happened? We would have had to go to the town to ask for money.
Or the reserve
I
fund.
understand it.
No, I'm saying we
No.
clear out the
Yeah.
FinCom reserve fund, and then there's still more needs.
Right.
Right.
We would have done that at town meeting, would we? Or would we have had to call a special town meeting to do it?
So if we were, if we were anticipating well, we would have called it at the annual. And a lot of towns do it after the fact. They pay bills. At a fall town meeting, they appropriate dollars to pay bills that are from the previous fiscal year. I'm loath to do that. If we can avoid it, I would much prefer to avoid that.
Well, what did we lower the reserve fund to for next year? Didn't we lower it from 160 to something less?
No, we actually raised it to 210,000 because we're concerned about the energy and fuel and electricity costs in the coming year.
The finance committee reserve fund is raised to 210. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, got lots of money to spend.
More.
So we don't need to.
Don't tell the fire department.
Yes.
So do you think it's appropriate to make a motion based on this spreadsheet? And I'm going to want a copy of the spreadsheet.
You can include it in the minutes or attached to the minutes, I would think too.
Yeah, do we have to specify the line items it's coming from, Greg, or can we just say in accordance with the spreadsheet?
No, you can just reference the spreadsheet. You can say,
Okay,
move to approve the interdepartmental transfers as presented in the spreadsheet dated today.
and what's the sum?
$204,642.59. Can you see that?
Okay. Yep, I make a motion to do interline transfers?
Interdepartmental.
Interdepartment transfers in the amount of $204,642.59 in accordance with the spreadsheet reviewed in this meeting, prepared on 6/23/2022. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Any more discussion?
I had a couple of questions, like the ZBA salaries, is that salaries for the board members or for the support staff?
I wish.
Yeah,
I was thinking, so our
it's for the clerk.
our general government support staff spent more hours on the zoning board, is that, is it
Because of
overtime
all
or
the
aren't they salary?
No.
It's-
Gail Hunter does our minutes as she does for Finance Committee. And because of all the 40B meetings, we had many more meetings
Yeah.
during the year. So she had many more minutes
Okay.
to do and much more paperwork to deal with, because I've received over 100 emails from residents regarding the 40B project.
Sure, I understand, okay, I was just wanted to make sure where the money
Yeah.
was, yeah,
But
okay, thank you.
I haven't received my paycheck yet.
Yeah.
Can I ask one question about the fire?
Yeah.
I mean, and, I'll preface this by saying, I understand no one has a crystal ball, things happen, people get injured, blah, 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 probabilities, but probability wise, right, adding the new full-time firefighter, I would have to expect that this kind of thing happening in a year, meaning a big ask for overtime at the last second, should be a much lower chance next year, right?
That's what we're hoping.
That's-
As long as we can fill the position.
Yeah, that's true.
Is that a
Yes,
concern?
hiring people is a real challenge right now. We are not getting a lot of applicants.
That was part of the reason why I said, let's try to get a policeman and a fireman, because, yeah, they don't just, you can't pluck them off trees anymore.
I would have thought that was a different kind of labor market for those specific positions, but I guess I could be wrong.
Yeah, I wish you were right. But,
Well, was there less training during COVID? So there's fewer trained people coming on, or we train them after they come on?
we typically train them after they come on.
Okay, so that's not an excuse.
Higher requirements from the state is probably the bigger. Yeah.
Yep. Okay, are we ready to vote on this?
I just had one comment, Sarah,
Yes.
on the fire thing. It's sort of what I call the denominator problem, like what's the level of service? And if the level of service is fixed and we have people that slip a little bit out of the workforce and we keep applying OT, eventually we're going to run out of OT. The other way to solve that is to back down the service a little bit. And I would hope from sort of a managerial point of view, if the chief and Greg and others were looking at a situation where a lot of people were out, rather than running the OT budget up beyond what the FinCom can handle, that maybe we say, hey, we just need to step back. We need to pull off the gas a little bit here. And maybe, we don't have 4 people on all the time or whatever. It's just a suggestion, because this is really a pattern. And, when we add more people, the OT gets worse. We add more people, the OT gets worse. So I just think we ought to take a good look at that. That's all. I have.
I second that what Maury just said.
Yes, and I just
Yeah,
want to,
I
I
agree.
know when we discussed previously about, DPW in our budget, we, in the reports that I send you, we break out the overtime. We're
Yeah.
gonna start doing that as of 7/1 for police and fire. So you'll see that separated out, going forward in your reports.
I mean, as an example, the ladder truck was at the gas station being filled up. And there were 3 firefighters there with a ladder truck getting gas.
But they were coming back from Gloucester.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, they went to a fire in Gloucester today.
Oh, okay.
Early this morning.
Oh, that's why they did have their fire jackets on. Okay,
Yeah.
that makes more sense. Got it. Okay, so we ready to vote on this? Take a roll call vote. Dean,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Maury,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
and Sarah says yes. Maury, you froze when we did the vote on the reserve fund transfers.
Yes, and I apologize for that. Everything went down and took a while to boot back up, but I'm in favor of that and wanted to record a vote of yes.
Okay, thank you.
And then, Andrea, this is a great spreadsheet. I'm wondering, would it ever be possible to send it out to us just
Oh, yes.
for reference? Because I know it's going to be in the minutes and it'll get lost somewhere, but this is a
Absolutely.
great snapshot of where we are.
Yeah,
Yes, I'll be sending this out along with, updated, actual, like the forms with these I
Excellent.
sent you.
so you're only going to be sending 3 forms, right? Oh, no, 4 forms.
You mean new ones? Because you
You
already have
got
the
the
other ones.
new legal and professional from the reserve fund, and then you've got the 2 changes, and then you've got the 1 new from the interdepartmental,
Mhm.
right?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, I will share all of that.
because I'll go ahead and sign the ones I have that are good. And wait on the others. I'll drop them off on Monday.
Thank you. I'll have the other ones printed out for you.
Okay. Now we move on to review of the town accountant proposed town finance policies. This is an updated draft. It's my understanding that Peter Twining gave some comments. Have people had an opportunity to read it? Are there any more comments? Are we in support of it? This is one of the items on the auditor's comment list as needing to be done.
And it's something that the bond market likes to see.
Okay,
I mean, we've given it to them in draft, but it's really nice. They prefer it finalized. So.
Right, exactly.
picky.
It's,
I did want to make a note. There was another thing that Peter mentioned that, and there's some section, it seems like it's almost redundant. And it's kind of done that way on purpose, because if you're looking under general fund, it points to reserves, and then in reserves, it points to general fund. So I just want to make sure you guys know that's why it's in there seemingly twice.
Okay,
I had a couple comments.
okay. Go ahead,
In
Dean.
the overview, and this is more, it says that we'll do things financially prudent and in the town's best economic interest. I think we should just say the town's best interest, because it's not always economic. That was a consideration. And then the other one, where they limit useful life to no more than 30 years. Some of the buildings and facilities are typically 50-year life cycle. Well, if it means avoiding an override, maybe we should, if we're going to fund a new DPW yard, instead of taking a 30-year loan, maybe if we can go to a 50-year, which is the life of the building, it might save, I don't know. Those were the 2 things that jumped out at me when I read.
Yeah, actually in the laws right now, in chapter 44, they actually have a whole list of the lengths of bond issues you can have for certain things. So we're kind of constrained by that until they change that.
Yeah, so
Well,
I mean,
so I know
so
it
are we
doesn't last
constrained
longer
to
than what
30
it's
for
paid
everything?
but They limit it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Those are my only two.
our hands are a bit tied there.
Yeah, okay.
Mike, do you have any comments?
Yeah, my one comment, and I know we, talk a lot about this, but, boxing us into the 10-12% thing. I can certainly get fine with 10%, but I don't see why it needs to be more than that. I mean, I spent a lot of time looking at the external audit report. And, if you look at how long we've had our AAA rating, which is of course the highest you can get, we've had it for quite a while. And then I married it up with kind of our excess cash. And, we've had the AAA rating for a long time, well before we hit anywhere near, you know what I mean, the 10-12%. So I don't know. It just seems like a unnecessary extra 2%.
I agree with that because I think what we're actually using now is the 10%.
Right. So then I don't think we should have the 10-12 in there.
I agree.
I'll make that change.
I mean, just to throw it out there so everybody can know, I mean, we've had the AAA as far back, I don't know, 8 years ago, 2014. This is from the report. And, our percentage of free cash back then was way lower than 10%. See if I can find it. Yeah, it was like 7%. You start in 14, it goes like 7% up to 8, up to 9, back to 8, jumps to 12, but again, we've had AAA the whole time and you can't get any higher. So,
Okay, I think that makes sense. And where do we stand on excess revenue getting into our free cash the end of this year?
I will have to look at and get back to you.
Okay, fine, okay. So do we have, so I'll make a motion to support the town of Manchester by financial management policies and objectives based on these suggested changes. Did anybody else have any other changes? Okay, I'll make that motion. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I had a question on the betterment assessments. Is that a separate fee or is that when you get an improvement to your property, your tax rate goes up? I mean, because you
Yeah.
No, it's a special fee based
So
on,
it's like a double jeopardy where the tax rate goes up and you get the fee.
so
Well,
for example, if a new sewer line was extended to a neighborhood, we might pay for that by charging the abutting properties a betterment. So it's a separate, basically a separate tax for a new service.
But their property tax will go up as a result of that betterment. It's
no,
Not
not because
necessarily?
it's
Not
not
necessarily.
connecting to sewer, no.
okay.
They will get a sewer bill. They hook up. to-
Right,
Yeah, no, they get a sewer bill,
Right.
but okay.
okay, I made a motion. Do I have a second?
Second,
Okay.
Any more discussion?
Yes,
Take a roll.
I'm sorry, one quick, Sarah, would this benefit from having a date on it? Just because maybe, I was just thinking, Andrea, maybe this year or this date.
Yes, at the bottom, I'll put my finance committee adopted and then the date of the meeting at the bottom.
Okay,
Interrupt, Sarah.
okay. Roll call vote. Dean,
Yes,
Andy,
yes.
Maury,
Yes,
Mike,
yes.
and Sarah votes yes.
Thank you,
So many-
Andrea, for pulling that together. and
Thank you.
Thank you all for your patience. I apologize for the last minute changes.
Reggie,
We'll
what's
try
up?
not to.
The next item on the agenda is the status of the dispatch decision. If you read the Cricket, you know that the Board of Selectmen voted Tuesday night to move to the regional center. I believe I passed around a memo that I received from the police chief, where he's suggesting there might be some advantages to staffing with a full-time police officer rather than an administrative person. I felt that he had some valid arguments. I think certainly the one about if people come in and the person taking the information is the primary witness, I would see that if I were in that position, I'd rather have it be a policeman being my witness rather than an administrative person.
I thought the intent was to call in an officer who was on duty at that hour who might be in the patrol car.
Well, if somebody's there giving records and they're not in danger, I don't think the intent was to call in a police officer, but.
No, but I guess you were just saying the argument is to have an officer taking a statement. I'm just sort of looking at, devil's advocate about yet another staff person, that's all.
Right, and I ran into
So-
him in town hall this afternoon, and I said he didn't need to be at this meeting because we really weren't gonna decide anything, but I did ask him to provide us with numbers as to the difference in cost with this approach versus the original approach recommended. I don't know, what are your thoughts, Greg?
So it's worth kicking the tires on this one, if you will. The idea was to staff the lobby 16 hours a day. And so that's going to cost, I think our projection was a little under 200,000 to do that. So if we take that same 200,000 and apply it towards this approach, it won't cover all the cost, but is the incremental cost to get to this higher level of service, it may be worth it. I think that's a discussion that's worth having.
Greg, can I ask a question? I mean,
Go ahead, Mike.
we added, right, in the budget that got approved, whenever that was in the past 3 months, we approved an additional police officer, correct?
Correct.
Right.
And so this would be one more on top of that?
Well,
Probably
more than that, but
Yeah, you'd need 3 new altogether, probably.
we're,
To
we
do
also expect we'll be losing the reserve officers, which are covering 3 full-time positions.
But this wasn't part of the concept I think we discussed when we were.
No.
No, this is new.
And,
This is-
so we had based our recommendation for the regional dispatch based on what we discussed. This
Right.
is something entirely different.
This is, right, and I think this is something we would take up in conjunction with the fiscal year 2024 budget.
Correct.
I don't think is anything, we need to decide upon now. I think we need to think about it, get some numbers on it, and then
Yeah.
look at it when we do the 2024 budget.
I get where my point is that, and I didn't witness the select board meeting, but perhaps if the economics were different, they would have come to a different decision.
Yeah, can I, I guess I'll ask this question to Greg. If I set this particular strategy aside for the moment, right? This one from Chief Fitzgerald, at a very high level, by us agreeing to hire a new full-time police officer and a new full-time firefighter, when you take that, but then you net it against the savings of going into the regional dispatch, the town actually comes out slightly ahead, correct?
Correct.
Okay, slightly, like under 100 grand, let's say, right?
It's right around 100.
Right around 100. Okay, fine, fair
Yeah.
enough. Right around 100 grand. Okay. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess you could make the argument that there's 100 grand to play with, I guess, but this, right. I guess we need the numbers. What end of the day, what will this cost?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, your net cost on dispatch was in the 345 range, 345,000 a year. And when I say net, because that's netting out the grant, the 911 grant that we get annually. And for round figures, you can use $100,000 for each new firefighter or
Sure.
police officer.
I mean, I guess to me, I think all of us were always in support of the regional dispatch. So to me, you know, saving the 300 grand and then adding a new police officer and firefighter, it's kind of like a beautiful win-win, right? Because we actually end up 100 grand ahead of the game, and we added a full-time member to fire department and police, right?
Right, first responders.
Right, exactly. But you know, it seems tricky to just immediately kind of,
Do another
I
one.
don't know, open that box.
I think we had, he had said that with the new reserve officer, he was going to try to run more 3-person shifts. So this would be, might be an issue when we have two-person shifts, but when we have the 3 people, I don't think we would need another person in the office as well. That would be something to look
No,
at.
the 3-person shifts is for fire, not police. He's only running 2-person shifts. In the
All the
police.
time, 24/7. Okay.
That's my understanding.
Okay, because I thought he had said he was going to go up to 3 on a few, the busy time. I'll have to double check that.
I thought that the purpose of hiring the police officer was to decrease the overtime budget.
That was
Same
the
thing
main,
Right.
Same thing with the fire, was to decrease the overtime budget and not increase the services. That's what I thought.
Correct.
right. I just had thought that there was some commitment to having a certain amount of 3-person shifts, but I'll double check the note. This is for another time, but
Okay, yeah.
this has merit. We'll look at it.
It's worth reading through and seeing his arguments, and we'll discuss it with him at some point in the future when we're working on the 2024 budget. Okay. Next item is the fiscal year 2024 budget goals and concerns. Greg had asked us to come up with a list of items that we would like him to concentrate on or take into consideration when he's pulling together the budget. Do people have thoughts?
Well, something that's kind of a recurring thought for me is in terms of our planning for things, for DPW or, fire department, when we're talking about capital projects, and, even the harbor master, we've had lots of different variations of options that have kind of popped up over the years. And they all come from, I think, the right place, trying to identify a need and fill the need. But it sort of feels like we're not consistently maintaining like a focus on following something through. And I guess I would like to see that in our planning for things that the town is considering, so that we're not bouncing around between a houseboat or, you know, a motorhome at Reed Park, or, you know, you name it.
I think I would add to that also, Andy. I think that I agree with you. And I think that it's important to consider the pieces of town property and what their potential uses are in the future. And I believe they're working on a facility study, aren't they, Greg?
Yeah, we don't have that underway yet, but I was just talking with Chuck earlier today about that.
Because I think that's crucial to get done so that then
Yes.
we can create a long-range plan regarding the various town facilities. What we replace when. Because, you know, it seems to me we're hard pressed to approve doing something for DPW and we don't know what our other needs are and where they should be located. Kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think a big one to consider is, it looks more and more realistic that we'll need a water treatment plant for Lincoln Street well with the PFAS. I think we have to consider a real possibility of putting that in. But we're coming up to the limits now, and I don't know if they've leveled off or not, but that looks like it's going to be a real possibility down the road.
What's the timing on that, Greg? If we get to the point where we're forced to do it, how much time do we have?
I don't know the exact time frame for that. It's fairly short.
Okay, so we
Fairly
need
short.
a plan in
You know,
place.
if you exceed the threshold, they're working on, you know, funding to help communities if they're over the threshold.
Okay,
But again, no guarantees, and that's a little bit of a moving target. But I think we will see more funding for that as time goes forward.
What, just to the nearest $1 million, what will that cost?
It's like an $8 million project.
Really?
drop in the bucket.
Really? Because I thought it was pretty less. It's like carbon filters. I thought, but
They need a whole new plant.
yeah,
Yeah, need a building to house them, and while we're doing that, it would make sense to treat the what is it? I think it's
Magnesium.
manganese.
manganese, very hard one.
Yeah, it's hard water, so that adds to the cost.
So there is some worst case scenario where the testing goes the bad way, quote unquote, and then we have to, like, quote unquote, hurry up. And
We got to scramble. Yeah.
what does that mean? Within like 6 months, 12 months?
You know, I don't know, Mike. I'm sorry. I have to look that up. It'll be longer than a year, but it may not be much longer than that.
Okay.
And state could force you to take it offline.
They force you to take offline.
Take offline the well.
Oh, well, yeah.
So that, you know, for us, that's 40% of our supply.
If you were pushed into that position, could you build or use something in the old DPW pump building that's bordering the school property? Assuming that it's not a high repair cost in there?
No, I mean, that's the same source, right? I mean, that's,
I mean, if you needed a structure to do filtering and
structure, I see.
structure, could you use that building to achieve that?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think because of the stream in between, the piping between the two may be problematic, but an interesting question, more. I don't know.
So that building was at one point, I think, owned by the town. And when the high school was built, there was an inadvertent sort of swipe of the pen that transferred it, I believe, to the school or the district or something. But that space may be very valuable in the future for water treatment if if this well is as important as it is and the regulations are changing, it might just be an anchor to windward that we could use. So, thought.
Yep, no, that's an interesting thought. I mean, the state has prohibited any use of that building because of its proximity to the well. But as a treating the well water, I would think we could get permission for that.
Yeah.
Something else just to throw out there on the same item, and I know this would certainly not solve the whole problem if that, like you said, 40% gets, shut down, but, the best way to make people conserve any kind of resource, right, is price. So, you might think I'm trying to make a revenue play, but, honestly, that would make people be as efficient as they could be with water, right?
Yeah, and our big safety valve, in a sense, is irrigation. A tremendous amount of our water goes to irrigation, tremendous amount. Now it's a great revenue source for us. So if we banned irrigation because we didn't have the supply, we would have to increase the rates significantly to make up for that lost revenue.
But you also need to differentiate between irrigation of grass and irrigation of shrubs and trees. Because if you shut in 2015, when they shut off the water, when they shut down all the irrigation, I lost hundreds of plants. And we need the plants for climate resiliency. So it needs to be a more realistic approach than just saying, I get it for the grass, but for watering other things, there needs to be something taken into account. I've got probably 7 dead trees in my backyard because it doesn't get watered. And it's, so
Well, that's where I'd be more in favor of just hiking prices, and then, whoever wants to spend the money, you can buy your water and water whatever you want, right?
Well, that's what we did with a tiered rate before.
right.
Right.
Right. So that's what we went to the tiered system as a step in that direction. The more you use, the more you pay.
Because the tiered rate, I'm guessing effectively it's catching the irrigation, right? In other words, if you're in the high volume tier, it's 90% because you're using a lot to irrigate, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you're effectively,
Yeah. Whether or not we're charging, high enough to make people pause, probably not.
right. But there's the lever. So you would raise that rate in that highest volume bucket because.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we have the structure in place. It's just a question of where to set those rates.
But it just, given the way it could go, it just seems like better to be on the front end than behind it.
Right.
Has the raising of the rates, Greg, changed water consumption habits? And I know it's a hard question because you don't have like sunny degree days, like heating degree days and all that probably, but has it had an impact or not?
No, I don't think it has.
I was going to say this market, I would think, is so price insensitive when it comes to water.
Yes.
Water compared to tax bills, it's like turn on the faucet and run it.
Yes.
Yeah, but eventually there's always a pain point, right? And clearly we haven't hit it, and that's fine. But even gasoline, right? Eventually people will start carpooling or what, right?
Right.
You can say it's inelastic and straight up and down demand curve, but eventually there's a pain point.
I think twice before I turn the air conditioner on in my car in a traffic jam.
I think another area that we need to look at with the 2024 budget, and this is kind of outside of the budget a little bit, but it impacts it, and that's the ARPA funds we have, the use of them, what other federal and state funds are available that could perhaps help offset our capital budget in fiscal year 2024. I'm a little nervous because we've been using about $1 million from excess reserves, and we don't seem to have a whole lot of excess reserves anymore. So it makes me concerned about where we're going to get the money for the capital budget. in OPEB, because I think we've been paying OPEB out of reserves. What else do people have, Maury?
I would just toss in three things. One is I think Mark Weld would be screaming this if he were here, is that I think we need like a rev number on the capital list. Because, and we've all talked about this, but it changes and it's very hard to get a view of what are we doing this year and what's happening 3 years out. I think second point is we also have had a sort of a carryover list on capital projects. And I think that's a little better this year, but some of these projects span multiple years. And I think getting a sense of how we work from year to year on capital is really important. The third one, I'm not sure we've talked about before, but is staffing. And I bring that up because it is a huge topic right now, particularly here in the Northeast, but all over the country, but particularly here in the Northeast. Hiring and finding and retaining people is really a challenge. And I think being able to look ahead at the whole year and say, where do you want to be in quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3 with additional staff, and how do we work with the staff we have? How do we retain people? I think that wants to have some careful thought. And I know it is probably, but it's really hard to lose people and have a gap and then sort of say, well, we did OT, we hired in professional services, and the whole efficiency just changes when you lose good people. So retaining that, I think, is really important.
What else do people have? Do you have anything else, Mike?
No, I'm good. I'm, just jumping on your comment about excess cash and talking with Andrea. I'm just, as usual, very curious to see where we stand June 30 when the dust settles.
Dean, do you have anything else?
I had written ball fields. I don't know if that's, I was embarrassed that the condition of the high school field is so bad and that we couldn't fund to replace it. But that's more of a school budget thing, isn't it?
Yes.
But and now there's the possibility that they might be contributing to the contamination of the well. And we're thinking of putting a third one over at Sweeney, which is also in the watershed. I just think we need to look at that a little bit, for what we want to do with these fields. I see the logic that artificial turf is superior for soccer. And for that reason, I would agree to have at least one. But I would much rather see more grass fields than these turf fields. So I was disappointed when we challenged the town to look for a better site for a park than the burn dump, and they just went to town vote with it rather than to look for other alternatives. I think there's room in there to find some suitable fields. Let's see. And that ties into Sweeney. Let's see, water treatment. The library bathroom, I thought, was a good project that we've been putting off for other things in the harbor and stuff that to me aren't as important. And what happened on School Street now, that road was in pretty good shape. To be digging that up again for something that wasn't, why all of a sudden are we doing water main work there? That wasn't on the plan. Where did that come from?
No, that's been on the plan.
It was on the plan?
Yeah, that's why they didn't pave that portion of
the north.
It got patched, but it didn't get paved.
Okay, so we went for that because we ran into problems on Tappan Street. Is that why we're doing that? I mean, did that even go out to bid?
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So
It's part of the water improvements, the improvements we do every year. We do different.
right, well, we
parts of
had
town.
Forest Street and Tappan Street for this year, but now it was Forest Street and School Street. All of a sudden,
Tappan's been held up because of the drainage.
there's an easement issue, right?
Drainage and easement issues, yes.
So is that why we switched them? Keep going?
Well, school was always on the list. We just haven't.
It
done-
was,
Yeah.
okay.
We just haven't done Tappan yet because of that, trying to get that final design locked in.
Yeah. Okay. And Chuck had a meeting on stormwater management. I was looking for the report. I couldn't find it, but I wasn't able to make the meeting at 3 today. I hope I can touch base with him on that. What his
He
plans
wasn't
are.
at that meeting.
What's that?
Chuck wasn't at that meeting.
Oh, he wasn't?
No,
Okay.
he was talking to us.
Right, he was at another meeting.
I thought there was a 3 o'clock stormwater management.
Yeah, but he's not stormwater. I mean, that's a task force.
Oh,
under the
okay.
Conservation Commission.
The Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
I'm real overwhelmed at work right now. We have hiring issues too, and I'm doing things I was doing 20 years ago because we can't
Yes.
find people to do them. All
Yeah.
right, I've had
So you're
enough
good?
questions.
Andy, do you have anything else?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Maury, you're good. Mike's good.
All set.
One quick question for Greg, since we're talking water pipes and all that kind of stuff. Just Greg, again, 30,000 foot view. Where are we? Are we in midfield? Are we in the red zone? Are we in field goal range? Where are
We're in distant field goal range.
Distant field goal. So we're across midfield.
We're across midfield, but we're definitely not in the end zone.
We're not in the red zone. We're not inside the 20.
Yeah.
Have we
and we're-
replaced half of the original piping?
Yes, over
Yeah.
half, over half.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
Just a follow-on question on roads, Greg. Are we kind of on the road plan? How are we keeping pace with that?
That's a good question. I'll have to ask Chuck that. I don't have as good a handle on that as I do water pipes.
I haven't seen much road work.
No, we've slowed it down a bit. He's focusing on the pipes on the ground and then following up with road. So he wants to avoid new pavement being dug up, with some pipe replacement. So he has slowed down some of the paving a bit. And making sure we're getting the pipes in and then do the paving.
Great, thanks.
Anything else? No? Okay.
With the piping, like they were talking about running piping from Upper School Street down to tie into the system, the sewer, and that the loop out to East Manchester. Those might be good opportunities for alternative corridors. If we build a construction path through the woods for piping, it might not be such a stretch to turn it into a bike path or improve some mobility when we're doing that stuff. So I don't know. I've been crying, if we want to develop that area, then a third corridor is needed to take pressure. School Street has no frontage for the traffic, and Pine Street does have some, but it's over there. So I still think a third corridor somewhere coming down and along the railroad tracks to Summer Street makes sense for planning. To look at that when you're looking at what we have to do for construction, because sometimes they go hand in hand. And also, like, big projects need staging areas, and staging areas can be converted into ball fields very easily afterwards. Things like that.
Yep. All right.
All right, I've said enough.
Okay. Move on to the next item on the agenda, which is to elect a chair and a vice chair. Our terms are for 1 year. Since we're not meeting until September, I figured that this was a good opportunity to deal with this. I am willing to serve another year as chair unless there's somebody else who
I
wants to do
nominate
it.
Sarah.
That was quick.
Quick, somebody second.
Second, And third,
Should we take a roll call vote? Dean,
Yes,
Andy,
yes,
Maury,
Absolutely, yes.
Mike.
Yes,
Okay. How about vice chair? You willing to do that another year, Andy?
I don't do a whole lot, sir. You do most of it, but sure.
Second,
Take a vote. Dean,
yes,
Andy,
Yes,
he's not, Maury,
yes.
Mike,
yes.
Sarah votes yes. Updates from liaisons. Are there any updates? I will say that I received an email from Mark Weld. He's got some health issues, and he is looking to go off of the CPC. I think he indicated he might have some names, so I don't know if there's people on finance committee interested in being on that, or if we should have somebody outside of the finance committee represent.
I thought he had already swapped out of that and I was gonna take his role as liaison, but then he was gonna cover planning, but maybe planning is what wants to come off of his plate.
Yeah, he said he's going to talk to me in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
He's just struggling right now, so and I'll see where he's coming from and what we should do.
Sarah, I'll stick with the school if that's all right.
Okay.
And this is the dormant 3 months where it's quiet and we can anticipate, I'm sure, some ramping up in the fall, but let's take the quiet time while we can get it.
Okay. We like that.
Well, so next year is going to be a big year. I think they're going to be looking for a pretty significant override.
And you say significant, Greg. You've mentioned $1 million. Is the $1 million for the total override or for Manchester portion?
$1 million plus for Manchester.
Okay, that's what I thought you'd said, but I wasn't sure. Yeah, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
how much do we have in our reserves? You know, to that dampen the
We
between
don't.
the year.
No, we really don't. Yeah.
We've used up our excess reserves.
And
I mean,
that's ongoing. You don't want to use
Yeah.
reserves for an ongoing expense.
yeah, it's got to go to override. It's a large enough sum that you want people to vote on it.
Right. Oh, yeah.
And who knows if Essex will support it.
What if everything does go according to plan, what will our excess be as of June 30 in percentage terms?
In our excess reserves,
We're right
used-
around that 10% number.
Yeah, we were a little under 10%, I think, based on what we used in the 2023 budget. So we were hoping that it would come back up to 10%
Yeah, likely with the
with
revenues.
year end.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I get, I mean, I'm maybe holding out hope or glass half full, whatever you want to call it. But I mean, it could be the case that the numbers come in better than we projected, and then there would be some funds, right?
yeah. The part of the problem is, Mike, we've had about $500,000, I think, from savings in expenditures, haven't we?
Yes.
And we don't seem to have that this year,
Well,
right?
There'll be some.
Yeah.
well, we had 160 grand from health insurance. The bad news is it got used pretty quickly,
Right.
Right.
right? So
Right.
So no, I
Yes.
mean, but just, on a gross basis, the savings is there or was there, and whatever. I'm thinking more on the revenue side, right? Like,
Right.
it could come in better than, and that's happened many times in the past. So, I'm just saying, like, to Dean's point, what if an extra 500 grand, let's just say, came in, through whatever, new development, property tax, whatever, then that potentially could be 500 grand we could use instead of a straight, linear dollar for dollar override, right? I mean,
Well, we can talk about it whenever we get there, but I would be adverse to that because I think if we're going to have a school override, it needs to be voted on by the voters as an override. and not use town money that we can be using for other town purposes.
Well, the state has a lot of excess money now, and maybe they could use it to fund some of these mandates that they give us. So maybe we could get more state aid.
Well, I don't
But
think
that's-
that's a conversation for tonight.
It also looks like if we want to stop SLB, it's the state we have to sue for the law. I don't know if anyone's considering that, but it sounds like no matter what, the state's going to rubber stamp this. So it seems like they're the ones we have to sue if we want to stop that project. So that's going to be costly, but it might be the best way to stall things until we get a new governor, who's also the Attorney General right now.
We have every expectation that no matter what we do on the SLV, that he's going to go to HAC, and if he goes to HAC, we'll have legal expenses
Yeah,
defending the town. And they
there's
won't.
going to be a lot of legal next year.
I
Um,
apologize. I have to drop off, so I didn't get a chance to review the minutes anyway, so I wasn't going to be much help there.
Okay,
Have a good night.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Mike.
so we have 2 sets of minutes to review from April 12th and May 26th. Do people have a chance to review them?
I did. They looked
Any,
okay.
any changes?
No,
On the 12th, for the dispatch, didn't we vote on whether it would be financially beneficial to move dispatch to regional? It was just a little semantics, but I remember that being the key reason for my support is that we were looking at the financial aspects of it, and we weren't the unanimous position to move dispatch versus that it would be financially beneficial to move dispatch. We wanted to keep that resident desire element out of it.
Yep, you're right.
That was the only thing.
Do you have that, Gail, that it's concluded the finance committee's unanimous position would be financially beneficial to move dispatch?
Yep, I have that. There was also an error in the amount of the OPEB, which I already changed. I had it at 2.4, but in fact it is 3.5 million in the OPEB trust. Sorry about that. I corrected it already. And sorry for the sketchy minutes, but there were no recordings. I'll make sure that there are recordings moving forward.
Do I have a motion to approve the minutes from April 12th and May 26th with those amendments?
so move.
On the 26th, I'm sorry, I thought we were just doing one at a time, but just.
We're running out of time. It's dark
Yeah,
out.
I
It's
know.
supposed to be over.
But it was a typo, I think. The second paragraph, that harbor master indicated a portion of Reed Park was created as an accommodation for residents so they could get into and out of the park. I think that means into and out of the harbor. I mean, we don't create a park so they can get into and out of the park.
Which paragraph was that?
The second,
Okay,
the first sentence, the last word instead of park should be harbor, I think.
right, you're right.
Got it. Got it.
Okay. Andy moved approval. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Dean will second. Any more discussion? Take a roll call vote. Dean,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes,
Maury,
Yes.
and Sarah votes yes. Great. I don't think at this point it makes sense to schedule a meeting in September. We'll wait. Is that okay?
I agree.
Okay. Anything else that people want to discuss that I didn't have it on the agenda? No?
Good.
Uh,
Motion to
motion.
adjourn.
Motion
I'll
to-
second.
Okay, roll call vote. Dean,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Maury,
Yes.
and Sarah votes yes. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks all.
Thanks,
Good night.
Andrew. Thanks, Paige.
Greg and Andrea.
Well,